afternoon. My name is Leon Cook. I'm a founder partner at Atticus Partners, and you're joining us today or listening to us from the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham for CPC 24. And I'm joined today by former SPAD extraordinaire and political editor at Talk TV, Peter Cardwell. How are you doing, Peter?
Very well, thanks, Leon. Surviving conference so far, anyway.
Well, last few yards, Peter. Last day of the conference season, I think I'd start with a question about what you think the mood of the conference has been. So, in anticipation of coming here, some people said to me, "Oh, it's going to be like a wake, on the back of a unmitigated disaster of an electoral campaign." But I have to say, it's been slightly more buoyant than I had expected, probably because of how Labour have performed in the last number of weeks on Closegate or whatever we want to call it, making a bit of a Horlicks of it. What is your takeaway thus far?
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I think that after 12 weeks, Labour are in serious trouble on a number of fronts. And certainly when I was in Liverpool last week, things were a lot more muted than I think they could have been, far less celebratory. Certainly here in Birmingham for the Conservatives, when you're at rock bottom electorally, or almost rock bottom, well, certainly the only way is up. As someone once said, things can only get better. And when you have four candidates, all of whom are running pretty positive campaigns, saying, I'm the one to get you out of this. I'm the one to make things better and unite the Conservative Party and to make sure that they do better at the next election, and even things like the council election, which a lot of people here, of course, will be running for council or running council elections in May time. Well, actually, that's something that has buoyed the mood here. And I think a lot of people are quite enthusiastic about the different candidates. It's really interesting as well. We're hearing a lot from them. Yesterday, I was in the main hall for Tom Tugendhat and Kemi Badenoch when they were doing their Q&As, for example. And a number of people said to me afterwards that they'd changed their mind as a result, some in one direction, some in the other. They're hearing from James Cleverly and from Robert Jenrick today as well. And really, it is a real opportunity for the rank and file, the people who knock the doors and hand out the leaflets and make the phone calls for the Conservative Party to have their voice heard. And that, for a lot of people who, let's remember, spend quite a lot of money to come to a conference like this. You've got accommodation, travel, food, all the rest of it. Actually, this is quite a big deal for a lot of people who are the party faithful, and for them to know that their voice will be heard and their vote will be cast fairly soon. Well, they have a lot more power than they usually have at these kind of conferences. So that, I think, is all contributing to a fairly positive mood.
Well, I think that the numbers normally speak for themselves. So apparently there were 40,000 delegates last week in Liverpool. Last Conservative conference, there were 28,000. And this week there are 8,000. I mean, those numbers are quite stark. But even notwithstanding, party conferences are supposed to be about an exchange of ideas, a lot about policy, but this week is pretty much a beauty contest. This is the leadership election. It's every opportunity every day for as many fringes as possible for the four to step in and give their version of why they should get the nod, or at least go through to the final two to the membership. Who do you think, to use an expression, has got the big mo? Who who has moved into front runner position in your opinion?
Well, I think Robert Jenrick is probably the front runner. It's interesting. I think Kemi Badenoch has slightly lost her mo in a way, because her momentum is certainly very strong. But Jenrick, who was 18 points ahead in some polls, is now within sort of 4 points, almost within the margin of error when it comes to her. I also wonder, you can poll Conservative Party members as much as you want, but actually does Kemi Badenoch get into the final two? And I'm not sure. I think it might be Cleverly versus Jenrick, which is a whole different contest, really. And I think that a lot of people here, they're hearing from Tom Tugendhat, a lot of people who have a lot of positive things to say about him, but I think it's highly unlikely he would be in the final two. So it's a strange kind of an atmosphere, certainly. But yes, I think Jenrick is the front runner and may well win.
It's almost like we've had a conversation before. I swear we haven't, but that was literally my prediction. I swear.
Okay.
Just because I think that if anyone had seen or had watched the Kemi's performance on the Koonsberg show on Sunday, you didn't actually have to have the sound on to understand that it wasn't exactly a home run. And I think that Bobby J, as they're calling him, everywhere here, has been out and about and is definitely in the ascendancy. And James and Tom are trying to find it out for the One Nation Caucus, left wing of the party vote. So we will see what happens there. But think about things through the red team prism. What would Labour be thinking if they're watching this week and what they've heard thus far?
Well, I think in terms of what Labour are thinking about, they're worried about who can oppose them best. Because the thing that has really struck me is how all four of the candidates are talking about what they would do basically if they were Prime Minister. And at least for 4.5 years, they're not going to be Prime Minister and perhaps never. So we're in a situation where they're talking about government. And I think there's quite an interesting way in which Labour have shown themselves in the last 12 weeks not to be ready for government or not to be governing well, but also I think the Conservatives have shown themselves not to be opposing well, or perhaps they have the potential to do it. If I were Keir Starmer, I would fear James Cleverly. Actually, I think he's very good at the one-liners. He's very good at sticking the knife in. He's very good at asking really, really tough questions of various people. Whereas I'm not sure Tom Tugendhat or indeed Kemi Badenoch is actually that good at that. I think Kemi Badenoch, there was a really good speech that she gave against Angela Rayner. It was a very sarcastic speech, some would say a patronising speech, but very interesting about how Labour's housing targets are very, very difficult. And that went sort of semi-viral within the political community for about, it was about 13 minutes long, and it was a very, very interesting one. But I'm not sure that she can propose something that has widespread appeal, whereas James Cleverly, I think, is probably the person, or possibly Robert Jenrick, who can do that. Jenrick is slightly untested in opposing. You've got to ask the question, if you're Labour, who do you really fear? And I think in terms of someone who could stand up at Prime Minister's questions and make mincemeat of Keir Starmer, that person probably James Cleverly.
Are you sure you're not tapping into my thoughts, Peter? This is uncanny, but I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said. I think that he is tried and tested in two big offices of state, and he's definitely who could I go down the pub with, and he probably wins that contest. Which for some people, it's literally an appeal vote or a sentiment thing.
Although within that, Leon, it's an interesting one. I mean, Cleverly is certainly the person we go down the pub with, I would imagine, of the four. But also, so was William Hague. And William Hague was a brilliant performer at Prime Minister's questions. He often bested Tony Blair. Westminster thought, oh, you're brilliant, you're a great debater. You say lots of very, very difficult things to Tony Blair. And what happened in 2001? Basically the same thing has happened in 1997. So there are all these questions that people think about when they're choosing a leader, but actually how much does it actually matter? Things are different now, media-wise, society-wise, than they have been 20, 25 years ago. But at the same time, some things will remain constant.
Absolutely. 14 years is a long time for people to need to forget all sorts of events along the way. So what goes down must come up. So it's very early days to be talking about the renewal and the possibility of coming back in 2029. But are there any particular themes that I mean, apart from people talking about leaving the ECHR and immigration, which is a continual theme of this conference and the party, is there anything else that you've heard popping out, whether it be related to housing policy or tax, that you think is going to be prevalent going forward?
Yeah, I think actually the military theme, and certainly now with what's happening today as we speak with Iran firing ballistic missiles towards Israel, I think the foreign policy side of things, who would take the 3 a.m. phone call, who would be the person who would, who people would trust in a crisis in Cobra, I think that is going to be a big question that a lot of Conservative members ask over the next few weeks, because the world is in a very perilous state. And certainly Tom Tugendhat and indeed James Cleverly, both as former military men, have talked about their particular credentials on that front quite a lot over the last few days. I'm sure they'll continue to do so.
A couple more. While we're talking about the broad narrative of what a new Conservative Party would represent and do, I haven't picked up too much from this conference about how they would go about defeating a Liberal Democrats attack line and seats they lost on the left wing, and besting reform on the right, while at the same time attacking on Labour. So they've got three fronts in which they've got to fight this. If every single reform vote in the last election came back into the Tory column, they still would have been short a majority.
Yep.
So is there anything from this conference that you've heard which is actually thinking about electoral strategy means X?
I don't think they're there yet. I think they're still working out which way is up. They're working out who the leader is going to be. They're working out why they lost. I mean, it's pretty clear for some reasons, but certainly when you think of those different fronts, it's about organisation, it's about management, but it's also about the fact that the country just got sick of the Conservatives and decided that they wanted an alternative. And certainly Labour's support is widespread, but it's not very deep. Also, Reform didn't, and have said so themselves. Nigel Farage has said this, that they didn't particularly organise very well, and actually, you know, they got 4.1 million votes and only 5 seats, whereas you had the Liberal Democrats who got 3.5 million votes, but nonetheless 72 seats. So I think from the organisational perspective, there's a lot there. There's a lot of anger as well with CCHQ, with the party centrally, in terms of how things were organised or not well organised for the Conservatives. So there's a lot really that for the candidates to do. And certainly Tom Tugendhat is someone who's spoken quite a lot about how he would reorganise the central bit of the Conservative Party. So that, I think, is certainly for the members who'll actually have a vote. Well, that is something that can certainly gain votes for him, and I would imagine for others when they talk about it.
Okay, well, last question, although you kind of semi-answered it already in your last answer. I hate this expression, learning the lessons. How is it too early to tell, or have we heard anything this week from the Conservative Party about how they would govern again if given the opportunity, or what they would do differently to rectify the past?
Yeah, there's a lot to rectify, I think, and also you're going to have a lot of different personnel the next time the Conservatives are in government with us in 4.5 years, or well beyond that as well. So there's a lot really that will change anyway. The circumstances will change, and certainly the personnel will change, and perhaps even the leader will change as well. But from that perspective, I think all 4 of them will have an idea, a sort of a vibes election. It's not really a policy election. It's not really a personnel election apart from the 4 of them, because presumably all 4 of them will be in some role in the shadow cabinet. There haven't been any sort of massive fallings out. So I think there are all sorts of ways in which the sands are certainly shifting in terms of the Conservatives. The kaleidoscope is in motion, but I would imagine this time in a couple of months, all 4 of them will be somewhere, and will be in the shadow cabinet, and will be setting out their own vision for the department they're shadowing.
Well, one would think, or one would hope, given the Conservative Party only has 121 MPs.
Yeah,
now's
exactly.
not time for much blue on blue. They need to,
and all 4 of them are experienced people. Yeah, indeed.
Exactly. So they need to be united and solid in their presenting of a version of the Conservative Party that they can take to the country. So with that, I think I concur with a lot of what you said there, Peter. I think it's too early to tell, but it's been surprising, I think, that it hasn't been an absolute on the floor conference. People are thinking about the idea that they can come back, and we will see what happens. Obviously, this leadership campaign has gone on and on and on. We all hope for the end of it. There was talk of the 22 committee changing the rules to have a leader in place to respond to the budget on the 30th of October. That's not going to happen as it currently appears. But if you want to understand what these machinations mean for your organisation, business, trade association, whatever, then you know how to find us at Atticus Partners, and we will continue to keep you up informed as and when events appear. But thanks very much for your time, Peter, and thank you for joining us live here from Birmingham. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Leon.